It's like an RIC. And there's more remote Italian
Good
names.
evening. Welcome to the Vortex Sarasota show. I'm your host, George Lewis. We've got a great guest tonight. We didn't think we were going to have. Evidently, she got some directions to the studio to kind of send her down the road a ways, but she's here with us tonight, and I'm looking forward to talking with her. I'm sure we're going to have a good time, and you're going to like her very much. My guest is Christine Rosero.
Rosero.
Yeah, I'm trying to add a little I-O in there. She's the author of a book called Hidden.
The Hidden.
The Hidden. And it also has a second name, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. It's a fiction work,
Mm-hmm.
which means you're a real artist.
Really?
Well, that's you know.
It's a story, yeah. It's a novel.
Yeah, that's the criteria. You know, if you write a nonfiction book, they won't automatically give you the artist's designation. So, it's true.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, it's true. So you're going to bring Christine up, right? So that the audience can. I think they should see who you are.
Yes.
So you've been involved in the study of philosophy and theology and religion, healing modalities for how long? Quite a while.
Since 1987.
1987. And, well, I guess I'm going to ask you right up front. Your book is The Hidden, and then, of course, there's a play on words here, too, you know.
There is.
Yeah, it's the crystal myth,
Right.
not the crystal meth.
You know, yeah. I know
Right?
when you look it up, you have to be careful because I was checking the Google ad, the Google, and all of a sudden that came up. I went, oh no.
Then that's not where
No,
the story
it's a
came
myth.
from, right?
No,
good.
no. That was way after the book was.
That was later.
This is just recently. This is in the last week.
Is that, well, it just came in off the press, right?
Yeah, well, actually, the original book I wrote, started writing in 2000.
Uh-huh.
And actually had it in a Lucid Dream in 2000.
Oh, okay.
Because I've been, to backtrack, I said, started 87. I was born this way, psychic.
Uh-huh.
Had a really unusual childhood like that.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, it's kind of hard because back in the day, who knew? I have a traditional upbringing.
Not only who knew, but it was like,
It was, it's very weird.
yeah, people were like,
To be like that and to.
were you raised a Catholic?
Yes, I was raised a Catholic,
Yeah.
so, and not that my parents weren't liberal and weren't very open-minded and artistic and musical, and I'm from New York,
Right.
right near down the city.
Oh, are you?
Yeah, I'm from Nourishville, New York. But, at that time, time frame, that's like 1967, like 68. And, being that, where do you have to mirror that when you start seeing things that are divine and seeing things that are not so divine?
Yeah, you don't.
When you're little.
You don't.
You don't. And at 4 or 5 years old, I started doing things like astral projection and having all these experiences. And there's really nothing, I never even thought to ask, to be honest with you. Kids really don't talk about it.
Well,
and
so
talk
it
to their
seems
parents.
natural, doesn't it?
Yeah, in a lot of ways it does.
And you think maybe other kids do the same thing?
I don't know if I even thought about it. I think you do. My own son, who is going to be 13, is very, very clairvoyant and psychic.
Uh-huh.
But because I raised him, he's raised with me, he has a voice for it. But even in that, my son can do things and see things. And I just found out about a year ago that he sees like nature spirits in the trees and all these things. And we didn't have the dialogue. And I said, wow, because I don't even do that one. That one is his, not mine.
Right.
And he thought everybody did it. Don't all little kids do that? I said no.
No.
So I think you kind of take it for granted. And it's not easy because it changes your perspective, which is good in a lot of ways.
I think that's essential as far as
Yeah.
spiritual progress.
And actually the book states that because the book in its way is somewhat autobiographical in its beginning because that is my beginning.
Well,
on the
I want
path.
to get a little bit more of your background. You were from New York, but somehow or other, you ended up somewhere close to Blowing Rock,
Right.
North Carolina. Right?
Asheville.
You were in Asheville.
Right. And I was not too far from Blowing Rock, too. I've been up there, too.
Because I thought it said that you were near Hickory and...
Yeah, I've been over there, too. I had 2 houses.
Did you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And how long did you live there?
7 years.
Asheville, I think, is open to what we're
Yeah.
talking about.
But not over there.
But not Hickory,
No,
because I know
no.
that area pretty well. I thought about buying I wanted a second home in Blowing Rock. I like it up in that
Oh, it's
area.
gorgeous up there.
Isn't it gorgeous? It's just Sarasota in the mountains is what it really amounts to. You know?
That's where the snowbirds go.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's where the wealthy snowbirds go.
Right.
Yes, yeah, it's not. Okay, so that makes sense. And how long were you in North Carolina?
I was there for 7 years.
And did you come here from there?
Yes, I just came down here in March.
How'd you
And-
connect up with Sarasota? What,
Well, this is the thing, going backwards again, a little bit, the why I'm in Asheville. When I got married, my second husband, who I'm widowed, but my first husband is still alive. He's in New York. That's my son's father.
Right.
When I met up with him, and he was English, and he was a music producer, and actually we kind of came together because of his music in my book. This had an original book, and I revised it
right.
from the original because I didn't think it was finished, and I didn't like
What art is?
what
What
art
art
ever
ever
is.
is,
Right. So the
yeah.
book is now 20,000 words, changed and different and revised. And when I met up with him, which was interesting because we both met because of the creative things we did, his music and my book. And I used to own a spiritual bookstore, so we met for that reason. And when I got together with him, I would have these dreams, and I always saw these keys, these beautiful keys, but they were on the West Coast. And I knew it wasn't California. And I said, I know it's got to be Florida, but I didn't know anything was on this side of Florida, Most people
New Yorkers don't.
We only know Orlando, and I never even been down here.
For
but
years, you never came here.
No, I've never been here before.
I mean, I'm talking about anybody from New York never came here.
Yeah, I think the Midwest was coming here. New York,
Absolutely.
everything was Orlando,
Now it's
Daytona.
changing.
Right.
Yeah.
So I never even knew, but I kept on having these dreams of these beautiful keys in the palm trees and what this area was. And it was interesting because I knew at the same time in the dream I saw other things open up too, which has to do with, media and writing. And this was like 10 dreams in a row. I
Whole
was
new
like,
world in that area.
and I knew, I said, somehow I'm going to be there and everything's going to be okay. Everything's fine. And, after that, we moved from New York to NC. And that's one of the reasons I used to originally live on the coast in NC, because I really do love the ocean.
Right.
And it just was in the right space. So we moved to Asheville because it was progressive.
Absolutely.
And had 2 houses. He had one in Asheville, and we had one in Marion, which is closer to the Blowing Rock house, which I still own,
Right.
which is up there. And he died over a year and a half ago. So
Wow, that's sad. What happened?
he had a heart attack. He was older than me.
Right.
And in a way, he's the vehicle for all this. So I think that's why when he showed up, all this other stuff opened up and why I dreamed about it.
Right.
Because after being in Marion, because I was housed in that part towards Hickory because the house in Asheville was a renovation.
Gotcha.
It was not really one place you want to live. I was a project to his.
Right.
And after being widowed and staying there for over a year, I just didn't want to be there anymore. So this is nothing here for me.
Needed something fresh.
Yeah, I said,
Start
I've
over.
always, wanted to be by the water, so I left. I sold everything, and I just picked up and I left.
Good for you.
And I just threw down a pen. I just went, where am I going? And I just threw down and said, oh, Sarasota. Okay.
Really?
That's it. It was totally intuitive, and I took my son on vacation here in January, and the minute I saw the keys and I saw
This
it
is it.
all, I said, oh my God, this is it.
The crystal
Right.
sands.
Yeah, I
beckoned
just
you.
knew it when I came here.
Yeah.
And I went back and made all arrangements to be here. So I arrived here in the very end of March. And
So you're really brand new.
I'm very brand new.
Right, right. It's great here. This is wonderful.
Oh, this is beautiful. I adore
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so do I. Even August. A lot of people have trouble in August. So you owned bookstores in New York,
Right.
and is that the kind of business you'd want to be in again?
No, I really don't want to do retail anymore. It
That's a
had a
hard
really
business.
good aspect. I don't mind merchandising. That's all very well and good. And I don't mind running business because I can. The nice aspect of my store, which was called the Oasis, was I was very accessible to people.
Right.
So anybody could talk to me. Of course, I used to do readings and healing and Reiki and stuff. But I like the accessibility to the public. I'm
Right.
pretty much into, you should be accessible.
Absolutely.
Because if you're not accessible, I don't believe in profiteering on that. You can't, I started the path in '87 and I was only 23. I had questions, and there's just people you couldn't reach. because they were just,
Yeah, they
and I
were-
know we need divine detachment, so I get that.
Right.
But it was not, there was just people that if you really just had a question, about anything you were trying to understand about the spiritual, or your own experiences, I think that people should be accessible. So it was one thing I liked about the Oasis was my ability to be accessible to whoever came in there
Right.
and answer a question or two.
Well, people, I think the gurus or people who
Right.
have, this, whatever they have, I think that, really the best thing they do for us is bring us back into ourselves, huh? Where we find the answers anyhow.
Mm-hmm.
It's like reading a book. I need books, but the books eventually bring me back
Right.
into me, which is kind of interesting. So why'd you write The Hidden?
Well, you kind of just said it too. On my whole path on this, I've been through many different parts of it. And I know what parts of it were profiteering, and parts of it were very disembodied and lead you to dead ends.
Profiteering on your part, or
No,
with people
not on
you
my
got involved
part.
with?
Other people I've seen. People who are really not walking the path at all.
Yeah,
People who really weren't positive at all and really didn't have love in their heart.
right.
They really didn't care. They just kind of cared about themselves.
Well, there's a lot of materialism in
Right.
in spirituality.
There is everywhere. And in here, the thing about it is that, there is really, it's such an open space,
Right,
the metaphysical. It's a very open space where there isn't always a literal space.
right.
Where if you're a musician, there's a literal space. And you could say, I play guitar. Well, then prove it. Then you're going to play guitar.
Right,
And people can tell you they're psychic and they can tell you all these things, but they can't prove it.
absolutely. It's
So
very,
there's a
very much
very-
conjecture.
Yeah, very big open space. So,
And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who claim and believe abilities that may not even exist.
right.
So they kind of muddy the water, don't they?
Right, they do. And I said, I've been around, since I've been around so long, and I've had I've had a lot of different experiences, good and bad. I mean, in general, transformative ones, and because that's the path. The path is like that. You take it, it's not necessarily going to be.
It's not straight, is it?
No, it's not straight path through tulips and
Not
roses.
close.
It's up and down and all over. And my book is basically starting in a bit of an original, kind of autobiographical in the beginning. It's not obviously after like the second chapter. But of course, it's based on some of that experience, and it goes into many things. When people ask me, what is the book about? It's almost like, well, it's hard to answer, because it's kind of like I put a lot of things in it. I have things that were my experiences on an astral plane in the book,
Right.
that are in the book. And what I'm really stating in The Hidden is that it's the novel part of it, because it's a spiritual novel. And I thought it would be more interesting to talk philosophical, mystical things within a novel format than to just bore people and just say stuff.
Right.
Because I've read those books.
So do you use magical kind of things to bring people from everyday world into a more spiritual
No.
world? Because
No, I
Yeah.
don't. I don't need them. And I think if you need them, that's fine.
Right.
Basically, with me, I just think it's really intention in your heart and your intention.
Intention's huge.
And your surrender, and this is a lot also, the book is about surrender and grace there. I mentioned those words.
Why do I get the idea that you probably got a lot of your connection through pain?
Through what?
Through pain.
Oh, yes.
You know.
Which a lot of, they say, people do. They say
Yeah.
that the tragic inspires mystical experience.
Yeah. Pain seems to be the touchstone to that
Right.
mystical experience. Yeah. My path started back in metaphysics back in the early 70s. And, in the 70s, it was a cult, it was devil, it was, which it still is from some quadrants, but not accepted at all. It was, you were weird, if you were, even more weird than today, so. But I was weird, so it worked out for me. So, what are your expectations with people's reaction to the book? What do you?
Well, this is how I put it, George. As I said, the book itself is really hopefully to expand perception. That's pretty much what I like to do. Because I figure if I give you the perception, you go off and you think about it.
Right.
It's your path.
Right.
You know, we don't take anybody's path from them.
We
You're not
sure
supposed
don't.
to. It's like, you know, the fish story in the Bible. You know, you don't sell the fish. You want to teach people how.
Absolutely.
And it's really for expanding perception. And what I expect from the book is this, and this is kind of my analogy. And it was a question I had back in '87, and I finally got the answer when I used to say to the universe, where do I begin? Where do I end and you begin? Because we always hear about let go and let God, and it's not all about us, and we have to have this co-relationship.
Right.
And it would come upon me by the last couple of years, and I always leave those open-ended. If you don't, you know the ones you can't answer, so you kind of leave them open-ended to the universe answers
Right.
you. And my analogy to that is the book is a kite that I built. And it took me a dozen years to build, really. And then I'm the one who's going to draw, you know, I got to run this down the field. It's my job, like being on the radio.
Right.
Anything I do. Grace is the wind.
Absolutely.
And grace will take this where it's supposed to be, and I'm not attached to that result.
Just kind of, I've done it, now here it is, and
here
let
it
it go.
is. I failed if I didn't try.
Well, I think that's what failure is.
Yeah,
That's
don't
maybe
try.
the only failure is.
Yeah, and as long as I
not
tried, I didn't fail. So as far as, I mean, that's all I can say is the graces will take it where it belongs, and I'm fine with that.
Well, it's so new that I wasn't able to get a copy, so I have not read it. So, for the audience, I haven't had a chance to read it, but I got a glimpse early on, and it looks to me like it's going to be a very interesting read. So, how about your psychic and healing experiences? How do they play into the book?
Well, from being a channeler your whole life. And
Is this a channeled work?
Yeah, a lot of it is, and it's kind of funny. I didn't really mean it to be that way. As I said, it started with a lucid dream. And I kind of go from this spiritual space of non-detachment in a lot of ways. And my son was very, very young at the time. He was just about a year old. And there's nothing else really to do. It was like, well, since I'm home, all right. And I didn't...
How old were you when you started writing?
This book?
No, when you started writing.
When I started writing, I was writing from probably, I've always been a writer. I mean, as far as from high school onward, but obviously just the kind of kid who wrote poetry.
Right.
And lyrics, because I played guitar. And the kind of kid, you know, who did good in English class and did good in college on it. And I always kind of, when I started the Oasis, I would do newsletters and do stuff like that. And I've written for other things on that capacity.
Right.
And it was just kind of like that light went on in my head in the same time that I had my son. You know, you really should be writing. And I thought, well, I don't know. Because I do other things. I've played music, and I'm an artist too.
Well, you're just artistic.
Yeah, so I do all artistic things. And it was just like, okay, well, so what? Better than watching Teletubbies all day.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
I'll write a book, and I didn't
get my own way, too.
What?
And I get my own way, too. You know, I'm writing a book. It's going to be what I want it to be.
Right. You know, so as I said, it kind of wrote itself in that, because I really so many times came across parts where I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And it'd say, go to sleep. You'll know in the morning. And I did.
Well, when you say it kind of wrote itself, you know, writers back in the 40s and the 50s and even earlier called it the Muse.
Yeah.
Do you think, you know, when we talk about channeled work and automatic writing, do you think the Muse was the same? Is the same
It could be
thing?
very well, yeah.
You know, because for me, I write, and you know, and in that I would get into that automatic writing, and it's, you know, and I couldn't tell whether it was the Muse or, you know.
I think it you know, really as an artist or musician, musical person all my whole life, it really is, because what do we do as artists and musicians and writers? We take it out of the nothing. It wasn't there before.
Absolutely.
It was not there before. So before we pull it out, it wasn't a book, a painting, a song.
So we bring it in from the divine and
Right.
into the material.
So there's the Muse.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll hear the famous people have said that they'll wake up with the song in their head.
Absolutely.
So I know it's all what it is. We're all channelers. We all live in that connection, whether we want to, you know, whether we want to accept that or not. We are all connected.
Well, we probably wouldn't need voice and language if, you know, we could probably read each other's minds except for one thing. I think that in order for you to read my mind, yours has got to be completely open. And we don't want that. You know, no, you're not getting in my mind because I've got this stuff over here I don't want you to see.
Well, I think we have to have boundaries because there is so much out there and there's so many things.
Oh, well, boundaries for sure, and that's in about everything, isn't it?
Right.
Especially with the psyche.
Right.
You did readings and that kind of thing?
Oh, yeah.
And what do you do to take care of your psyche?
In the readings?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it took a long time. I didn't do readings till my 30s.
Right.
When I got old enough to really have a more defined boundary of my own ego space and my identity, which you have to have.
Absolutely.
I know people who have really bad boundary issues from when they're younger, and I understand them. And that could make you psychic, but that makes you very vulnerable, and you're getting a lot of bad information. And you're not really grounded. So when I got into my 30s, it was certainly okay to do. Because believe me, the Oasis didn't start until my 30s. I think I was about 32 when I started.
Is that right?
It's 1995, and 31 or 32. And at that time, then I started, I really didn't even mean to go into it. I had the store because I was really more interested in books and healing. And it just kind of happened. Another one of these things, it just kind of happened. Like, well, you're here, and I knew I could do that, so it just kind of happened. It was not one of my aspirations.
Oftentimes it's not, is
No.
it? You know, it's kind of. What kind of channeler are you?
Well, it's really hard to say. I always kind of call it a collective, and I know it's angelic, and I know it's divine, and I know it's spirit guide and dear departed, and ET in that, and of course, what do we know? Angels and ETs.
Do you have to take on a different voice? Or
No,
any of
I
that?
don't take on a
so
different voice.
So you're what they call a clear channel. You just
Clear
just
channel,
come through
right.
and you just
Yeah.
you speak it at that point.
Right, and I could see it. I mean, I see through certain things, and I have done it for people in the past, and I don't turn it on and off where if there was someone who needed to come in who was related to you, who was
Right.
departed, I could see them stand behind you, and they'll start talking to me. And then I'll say things that I can't possibly know.
I
So it's
understand.
really easier to do for someone else than yourself.
Well, I think there's some kind of, and I'm not sure why, but there's some kind of a real blockage there, you know, where we can't read for ourselves.
Because you already know it. We really, in a lot of ways, already know it. So and we're so attached to it. We are attached to the answer.
Well, part of the problem with knowing it, I think you're absolutely right, is we're so invested in our story. You know, we all have a story, and a lot of what we know doesn't coincide with our story. And gosh, I don't want to let my story go, because how will I get what I think I need and want, right? Yeah, it's... So, how about transformational experiences? Tell me about...
One of them, I'd have to say, probably one of the more profound ones that I had on the path was in '97, and this is when I was married to my son's father. We had our house burned to the ground. I kind of picked up all that energy. I owned the Oasis at the time, and I kind
Right.
of was picking it up, but I couldn't really target what that was, and that's almost too hard to do because it's to me really a fire. You're picking up an energy, and you're picking up a negative one, or it's like a destructive transformational energy, but you don't
Right.
know what it is. And I have to say that was huge because it changed everything. It changed me because it took me out of a space of dealing with maybe the divine on one level and seeing it on another, which is part of theology. When people talk about the first veil of God, and they talk about him as the master of divine chaos.
Right, absolutely.
And
we have Shiva on the other.
Shiva, and that's funny because Shiva herself actually showed up just before the fire. I didn't even know, no, not Shiva, Kali. And that was interesting because I was reading something in the Oasis and it was all about Kali, and I burst into tears and I didn't know why. And I'm like, why am I crying over Kali? What's going on? And my husband at the time didn't get it. He was like, why are you crying? And I said, I don't know why. It's just something touching me. A week later, she ate my house. I understand it, but at the time, and it's not that I cared about the things. I lost all these animals in it. We had 3
that's
dogs.
tough. Oh, that's
And
tough.
that's what got me, is it was going through all these different parts of my head
Oh, boy, yeah, I can.
and having to wrap around the shadow to become whole.
Well, I think we have to do that anyhow, don't we?
We do, but not
Yeah.
everybody wants to, and you're really
Well,
learning
most
how to
people
turn it into
avoid it.
positives. And of course, that really is kind of the beginning of my marriage crumbling, because we went 2 different directions from there.
Right. That experience was so impacting. It just
Right, we just kind of split off at that point, little by little.
You know what, we got about 2 or 3 minutes left.
Okay.
Why don't you tell us where we can find your book, where we can
Okay.
find you? And,
Yeah, well, I live in Bradenton.
and your website?
My website is angelmoonwing.com.
Great.
On that, you can buy the book itself.
Mhm.
It links off. There'll be more added to the website. You could read a little more about the book on the website. There'll be more pages. I'll make a blog. I have a YouTube channel, but I haven't started anything yet.
Yeah, I checked to see if there was.
Yeah, there is, but I haven't put anything on it right now.
Right.
I'm just making all these little connections.
Absolutely.
The book is also will be available at all online retailers. So it will be iTunes, Nook, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, all of that. And
Right.
some, I'm working out at 1 or 2 stores in Sarasota already, have said yes. And
Have you been to Circle Books?
no, that one,
Go to Circle Books. They'll.
I'm still figuring that out. And I've been over to Tampa and Pinellas and,
Right.
so we just keep on going. I said I'm still running it down the path.
Great. Well, you've been a great guest. I'm sorry you got bad directions, but I'm glad you stuck with it and found your way here.
Yeah, we
so-
stick with it.
Yeah, it's been a nice talk with you. I
You
appreciate
too.
it. Yeah. Well, another good show, a great guest. Be sure to come back next week, same time, same place. And in the meantime, don't forget to accentuate the positive and have a fantastic week.